The sky above Talvis Prime burned with streaks of fire. Commander Hyun stood on the observation deck of the defense station, watching his world die. Ships fell from orbit like dying stars, their hulls torn apart by crystalline weapons that cut through shields as if they were paper. "Commander, the Eastern Fleet is gone," his tactical officer reported. The young man's voice shook. "All 12 ships destroyed in under 3 minutes." Hyun closed his eyes for a moment. 12 ships, 4,000 souls gone, just like that. The Devourers had arrived 6 hours ago, and already half of Talvis Prime's defense force was dust floating in space. "Send the evacuation order to all civilian sectors," Hyun said. His voice was steady even though his heart was breaking. "Get as many people off the planet as possible." He turned to look at the planet below. Talvis Prime had been his home for 40 years. Beautiful cities of silver and glass covered the continents. Gardens that stretched for miles. Schools where children learned about the great Kelvorian Empire that had once ruled 847 star systems. Now it would all be ash. The Devourers were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were not organic beings. They were crystalline structures that moved and thought as one mind. They consumed worlds, taking every resource, every piece of metal, every drop of water. When they left a planet, nothing remained but bare rock. For 3 years, they had swept through the galaxy. World after world fell. Fleet after fleet was destroyed. The great civilizations that had stood for thousands of years crumbled in months. The Kelvorians, the Vrexians, the Ilthari, all of them were now refugees running from system to system, hoping to survive just one more day, sir. "High Counselor Tay is calling," the communications officer said. Hyun activated the screen. Counselor Tay appeared, his blue skin pale with fear. Behind him, the council chambers were in chaos. Officials ran back and forth, carrying data tablets and shouting orders. "Commander Hyun, what is your status?" Tay asked. "We have maybe 6 hours before they reach the surface," Hyun replied. "We're evacuating civilians, but we won't get everyone off in time." Tay's face fell. "How many will we lose?" "Millions." The word tasted like poison in Hun's mouth. "Then we make our stand here," Tay said. "Every ship, every weapon. We cannot keep running. We cannot win," Hyun said quietly. "They've destroyed everything we threw at them. Our weapons barely scratch their hulls." "Then we die fighting," Tay said. "Better that than running until there's nowhere left to run." The screen went dark. Hyun stared at his own reflection in the black glass. A tired warrior looking back at him. He was 53 years old. He had fought in border wars and peacekeeping missions. He had trained for combat his entire adult life, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Commander!" The tactical officer's voice was urgent. "Something just appeared in the outer system." "The Devourers?" "No, sir. I don't know what it is. The energy signature is completely unknown." Hyun turned to the sensor display. A ship was there, but it didn't match any known design. It was large, roughly the size of a battle cruiser, but the shape was all wrong. Angular and brutal, covered in armor plating that looked far too heavy. The whole thing looked like it was built to take punishment rather than avoid it. "Can we identify it?" Hyun asked. The sensors officer shook her head. "No records match, sir. It's using a propulsion system I've never seen. Wait. It's moving, fast." The unknown ship was heading straight toward Talvis Prime, toward the battle, toward the Devourers. "Try to make contact," Hyun ordered. "Already tried, sir." No response. Meanwhile, on the surface of Talvis Prime, Nari worked frantically in her laboratory. Around her, the city was emptying. People rushed to the spaceports, carrying what few belongings they could. Children cried. Parents shouted. The world was ending, and everyone knew it. But Nari couldn't leave. Not yet. She was so close to understanding. For 2 years, she had studied the Devourers. She had analyzed their weapons, their ships, their patterns. She was an energy theorist, one of the best in the Kelvorian Empire, and she had discovered something important. The Devourers were attracted to specific energy signatures. The antimatter reactors that powered every ship in the galaxy gave off a particular frequency. The Devourers could sense it from light years away. They hunted it like predators hunting prey. "Dr. Nari, we need to leave now." Her assistant stood at the door, his eyes wide with fear. "The last transport leaves in 20 minutes. "Go without me," Nari said, not looking up from her work. "I need to finish this. You'll die here." "We're all going to die," Nari snapped. Then she took a breath and spoke more softly. "Go, please, I'll follow soon." The assistant hesitated, then ran. Nari heard his footsteps echo down the empty hallway. She returned to her data. If she could just prove her theory, maybe they could build reactors the Devourers couldn't sense. Maybe they could hide. Maybe they could survive. Her computer screen suddenly flashed with an alert. An unknown ship had entered the system. Nari pulled up the sensor data, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear for a moment. The ship's energy signature was completely different from anything she had ever seen. It wasn't antimatter. It was something else, something the Devourers might not recognize. Interesting, she whispered. Above the planet, Commander Hyun finally received a response from the unknown ship. The voice was clear, speaking perfect Kelvorian despite the strange accent. This is Captain Minho of the Terran vessel Defiant Dawn. We received your distress call. Do you require assistance? Hyun stared at the communications console. Terran? He had never heard of such a species. Captain Minho, this is Commander Hyun of the Kelvorian Defense Fleet. Yes, we require assistance. We are under attack by hostile forces. But I must warn you, these enemies are extremely dangerous. They have destroyed hundreds of our ships. If you value your life, you should leave this system immediately. There was a pause. Then Captain Minho's voice came back, calm and almost casual. Commander Hyun, we didn't travel 300 light years just to run away. Send us your tactical data. We'll help however we can. Hyun felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. It was small and fragile, easily crushed. It was hope. Transmitting data now, Hyun said. And Captain. Thank you. On the sensor display, 3 Devourer assault carriers were changing course. They had detected the new ship. They were moving to destroy it. Hyun watched as the Terran ship, this Defiant Dawn, adjusted its position. Instead of running, it was accelerating toward the enemy. They're insane, the tactical officer whispered. Maybe they were, Hyun thought. Or maybe they were something the galaxy hadn't seen in a very long time. Maybe they were warriors who still believed they could win. Captain Minho stood in the center of the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. No panic, no fear, just focused professionalism. Lieutenant Yuna, tactical assessment, Minho said. Yuna's fingers danced across her console, pulling up data from the Kelvorian transmission. Her face was lit by the blue glow of holographic displays. 3 enemy carriers approaching, Captain. Each one is approximately 2 kilometers long. Weapons appear to be energy-based, using crystalline focusing arrays. Their shields are unusual. They seem to absorb energy weapons rather than deflect them. Weaknesses? Unknown, sir. The Kelvorians say their weapons are ineffective. Minho nodded slowly. Their weapons? Not ours. A small smile appeared on Yuna's face. No, sir. Not ours. Chief Engineer Jiho's voice came through the internal comm. Captain, the reactor is running at optimal levels. All weapon systems are charged and ready. Thank you, Jiho. Keep the backup systems hot. I have a feeling we'll need them. Dr. Sora approached from her station at the science console. She was younger than most of the command crew, but her expertise in xenobiology had earned her place on the Defiant Dawn. Captain, I've been analyzing the enemy composition, she said. They're not organic. They're crystalline silicon-based structures with some kind of networked intelligence. They might be operating as a hive mind. Can they be reasoned with? Minho asked. The Kelvorians have tried. No response. They just attack and consume. Minho absorbed this information. In his 42 years, he had seen a lot. He had trained for first contact scenarios that ranged from peaceful trade to outright war. Earth had spent 2 centuries preparing for this moment, the moment when humanity finally met other intelligent life. They had hoped for peace, but they had prepared for war. Captain, the enemy vessels are changing formation, Yuna reported. They're splitting up. One is continuing toward the Kelvorian station. The other 2 are heading toward us. They see us as a threat. Good. Minho activated the ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the captain. Battle stations. We are about to engage an unknown enemy force. Remember your training. Trust your equipment. Trust each other. This is what we built the Defiant Dawn to do. He closed the channel and looked at his crew. Let's show them what humans can do. The Devourer carriers were massive things. Their hulls were covered in crystalline structures that seemed to grow and shift like living things. They moved through space with an eerie grace, their weapons already charging with pale blue light. On the Kelvorian defense station, Commander Hyun watched with growing horror. They're not retreating. His tactical officer said, "The human ship is accelerating toward the enemy. Can we help them?" Hyun asked. "Our weapons won't make a difference, sir." "We already know that." Hyun clenched his fists. Another brave crew about to die for nothing. He had seen it too many times, but then something strange happened. The Defiant Dawn opened fire, but they weren't energy weapons. They were physical projectiles moving at incredible speeds. Railgun rounds made of depleted uranium, each one massing several tons and traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. The first Devourer carrier tried to absorb the impact with its shields. The shields were designed to handle energy weapons, to capture and redirect the force of lasers and particle beams. They had no defense against solid matter moving at relativistic velocity. The rounds punched through the shields as if they weren't there. They tore into the crystalline hull, creating massive impact craters. Fragments of crystal exploded outward in beautiful, deadly patterns. "Direct hits," Yuna called out. "Enemy shields ineffective against kinetic weapons. Structural damage across multiple sections." The Devourer carrier tried to return fire. Blue energy beams lanced out, striking the Defiant Dawn's hull. On a Calvorian ship, those beams would have cut through the vessel like a knife through water. But the Defiant Dawn's armor was different, layer upon layer of composite materials, ceramic plates and reactive armor. The energy beams scorched the surface, melted some of the outer plating but didn't penetrate. "Armor holding," Jiho reported. "Hull breach in Section 7, but bulkheads sealed. No casualties. Return fire," Minho ordered. "Full spread," the Defiant Dawn's weapons spoke again. Railguns, missile launchers, and nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers all fired in coordinated patterns. The ship's computer targeted weak points in the enemy hull, areas where the crystalline structure was already damaged. One of the Devourer carriers began to break apart. Its crystalline structure couldn't handle the kinetic impacts. Cracks spread across its hull like spider webs. Then in a flash of light it exploded. Nari watched from her laboratory on the surface. Her screen showed the battle in orbit. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. A single unknown ship was fighting 2 Devourer carriers. "And winning." "Impossible," she whispered, but the data didn't lie. The human ship was using completely different technology. Different weapons. Different armor. Different everything, and it was working. She immediately began recording everything. The energy signatures, the weapon types, the tactical patterns. Her scientific mind was racing. If they could understand this technology, maybe they could adapt it. Maybe they could fight back. The second Devourer carrier was retreating now. It had sustained heavy damage and seemed to realize it couldn't win. The third carrier, the one that had been heading toward the Calvorian station, also changed course. It too began to pull back. On the Defiant Dawn, Yuna monitored the enemy withdrawal. "They're leaving the system, Captain," she reported. "All 3 remaining carriers are heading for the jump point." "Let them go," Minho said. "We came here to protect these people, not to chase every enemy ship across the galaxy." He activated the comm channel to the Calvorian station. "Commander Hyun, this is Captain Minho. The immediate threat has been neutralized. What is your status?" There was a long pause. When Hyun finally spoke, his voice was filled with something that might have been disbelief or wonder or both. "Captain Minho, what are you?" Minho smiled slightly. "We're humans. We're from a planet called Earth. We've been listening to galactic broadcasts for about 70 years. We heard your distress calls. We came to help. Your weapons. Your ship. Nothing like this exists in known space. That's because we developed our technology in isolation," Minho explained. "We didn't know if other species were friendly or hostile, so we prepared for the worst." On the station, Hyun looked at his crew. They all wore the same expression of amazement. "Captain Minho, we have 3 million people on the surface who need to evacuate. Can you provide cover while we complete the operation?" "Affirmative, Commander. We'll hold position in orbit. If the Devourers come back, we'll be here." High Counselor Tay appeared on Hyun's screen. The old politician's face showed shock. "What just happened?" Tay asked. "I think," Hyun said slowly, "we just found the allies we've been praying for." Below in her laboratory, Nari was already composing her report. The humans used fusion reactors, not antimatter. Their energy signature was completely different. The Devourers wouldn't be able to track them the same way they tracked galactic ships. This changed everything. Captain Minho stood on his bridge, looking at the view screen. Talvas Prime hung in space like a blue and green jewel. Behind it, stars stretched into infinity. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were regrouping. They would come back. They always did, but now they would face something new. Something they hadn't encountered before in their rampage across the galaxy. They would face humanity. And humanity, Minho thought, didn't know how to quit. 3 days after the battle at Talvis Prime, the news had spread across every surviving refugee fleet in the sector. A new species had appeared. A species with weapons that could hurt the Devourers. A species that had won. Commander Hyun sat in a meeting room aboard the Defiant Dawn. It was his first time inside a human ship, and everything felt strange. The corridors were narrow and utilitarian. The walls were covered in pipes and cables that would have been hidden on a Kelvorian vessel. Everything was built for function, not beauty, but it worked. That was all that mattered. Captain Minho sat across from him, along with Lieutenant Yuna and Dr. Sora. Between them, Nari projected holographic images of her research. The Devourers track antimatter signatures, Nari explained. Her excitement was barely contained. Every ship in the galaxy uses antimatter reactors. The energy signature acts like a beacon. The Devourers can sense it from incredibly long distances. But our fusion reactors don't give off that signature, Minho said. Exactly, Nari gestured at the data. Your technology is invisible to them, or at least harder to detect. Hyun leaned forward. Can we modify our ships? Change our reactors? Dr. Sora shook her head. The engineering required would take months per ship, and you'd need to completely rebuild your power distribution systems. We don't have months, Hyun said bitterly. We barely have weeks before the Devourers return in force. Minho tapped his fingers on the table, thinking. Then we don't modify your ships. We use them as they are. But they can't fight the Devourers, Hyun protested. No, Yuna said, her eyes lighting up as she understood Minho's plan. But they can evacuate civilians. They can carry supplies. They can do all the support work while we handle the combat. We? Hyun looked at the human captain. You mean your ship? Minho smiled. Commander Hyun, I need to tell you something. The Defiant Dawn isn't alone. We have 6 more ships like her in nearby systems, and we're all here for the same reason. 7 ships. Hyun's hope flickered, then dimmed. Against thousands of Devourer vessels? You've been running, Minho said quietly, trying to escape. But they're faster than you. They're everywhere. You can't outrun them. So what do? We stop running, we fight. We hit them where it hurts. Minho pulled up a star chart. The Devourers are harvesting the mineral-rich worlds in the Corva system. They're stripping the planets bare to build more ships. If we destroy their harvesting operation, we slow them down. Hyun stared at the map. Corvus was deep in Devourer-held space. Going there would be suicide. You want to attack them? He asked. I want to show them that there's a price for what they're doing, Minho said. I want to show your people that we can win. Hyun was quiet for a long moment. Then he straightened his shoulders. What do you need from us? Ships, not for fighting, but for support. We'll need scouts, supply vessels, rescue ships for any survivors. And most importantly, we need you to spread the word. Tell every refugee fleet that humanity is here. Tell them we're not running anymore. That night, Nari worked with Chief Engineer Jiho in the Defiant Dawn's reactor chamber. The fusion reactor hummed with contained power, a star in miniature held by magnetic fields and human ingenuity. It's beautiful, Nari said, studying the readouts. Jiho grunted. It's functional. That's what matters. Your people value function over form? We value what works. When Earth was alone, we couldn't afford to waste resources on making things pretty. We made things tough. Things that could take damage and keep working. Nari looked around the reactor room. Every system had backups. Every backup had backups. Redundancy layered on redundancy. How long did you prepare for first contact? She asked. About 200 years, Jiho said. We detected galactic radio signals in the early 2100s. We knew we weren't alone. But we also knew we were far behind technologically. So we prepared. We built weapons. We built ships. We waited. You must have been terrified, Jiho smiled. Terrified? Maybe at first. But mostly we were determined. Humans don't give up easily. It's our best trait. Or our worst, depending on who you ask. 5 days later, a combined fleet gathered at the edge of the Corvus system. 7 human warships, each as formidable as the Defiant Dawn. Around them, 40 Kelvorian vessels served as support ships. Commander Hyun now commanded the support fleet from his flagship. He watched the human ships with something approaching awe. They moved in perfect formation, their tactical coordination flawless. "All ships, this is Captain Minho." The comm crackled. "We go in fast and hard. Target the harvesting platforms first, then the devourer ships. Support fleet stays at the jump point. If this goes wrong, you run. Understood?" "Understood," Hyun replied, though he had no intention of running. The human warships jumped into the system. Corvus 3 hung in space like a wounded beast. Massive harvesting platforms covered its surface, drilling deep into the crust. Devourer ships orbited the planet, collecting resources and ferrying them to enormous construction yards in orbit. When the human ships appeared, alarms screamed across the Devourer network. The Hive Prime consciousness recognized them. These were the ones who had fought at Talvis Prime, the ones who could hurt them. 20 Devourer warships moved to intercept. The battle was nothing like Hyun had ever witnessed. The human ships fought with a coordination that seemed almost telepathic. When one ship drew fire, another would attack from a different angle. When shields weakened, the damaged ship would fall back while fresh ships took its place. Their weapons were devastating. Railgun rounds tore through Devourer hulls. Nuclear missiles detonated in brilliant flashes, their electromagnetic pulses scrambling the crystalline structures. Laser batteries carved through armor plating, but the Devourers were learning. They adapted their tactics, focusing fire on individual human ships, trying to overwhelm their defenses. The human warship Guardian's shield took heavy damage. Its armor was breached in multiple places. Fires burned across 3 decks. "Shield, this is Dawn." Captain Minho's voice was calm. "Fall back." "We've got your position." "Negative, Dawn," the Guardian's shield captain replied. "We can still fight," and they did. The damaged ship continued firing even as its hull glowed red from heat stress. Lieutenant Yuna coordinated the entire fleet from her console. Her tactical display showed every ship, every weapon, every threat. She directed fire with precision that turned chaos into choreography. "Target the harvesting platform on the northern continent," she ordered. "All ships, full salvo. 7 human warships fired as one." The harvesting platform, a structure the size of a small city, exploded in a cascade of secondary detonations. Nari watched from the support fleet, recording everything. The human fighting style was so different from Kelvorian tactics. They didn't try to avoid damage. They accepted it as inevitable and planned for it. Their ships were built to take punishment and keep fighting. It was brutal. It was effective. It was winning. The Devourer forces began to retreat. They had lost 12 ships and the harvesting operation was in ruins. For the first time in 3 years, the Devourers had been forced to withdraw. As the human fleet regrouped, Hyun received a message from High Counselor Tae. "Commander, I'm watching the battle reports from across the sector." Tae's voice was shaking with emotion. "People are celebrating. For 3 years, we've had nothing but defeats and losses. Now finally we have a victory." Hyun looked at the human warships on his display. The Guardian's shield was badly damaged but still operational. The others had varying degrees of damage but all were combat ready. "They taught us something important today, Counselor," Hyun said. "What's that?" "That the Devourers can bleed. And if they can bleed, they can die." On the defiant dawn, Captain Minho addressed his crew. "Well done, everyone. Damage reports?" "Moderate damage to armor in multiple sections," Jiho reported. 2 railgun turrets offline. 1 reactor running at reduced capacity. "We can repair everything with time." "Casualties?" 17 wounded, none critical. 0 fatalities, Minho nodded. "Get our people to medical. Start repairs. And someone get me a casualty report from the other ships." Dr. Sora approached him quietly. "Captain, the Kelvorians are calling you a hero." "I'm not a hero," Minho said. "I'm just doing what humans do. We protect those who can't protect themselves. That's not heroism. That's just human nature." Outside the ship, stars burned in the eternal night, and for the first time in 3 years, the survivors of the galaxy dared to hope. Word of the victory at Corva spread like fire through the survivor fleets. Refugees who had known only defeat for 3 years now spoke of hope. Children heard stories of the humans and their impossible ships. Old warriors dared to think of returning home. High Counselor Tae stood before the gathered remnants of the Galactic Council. Representatives from 17 different species filled the chamber, though many attended via hologram from distant refugee ships. The humans have proven that the Devourers can be beaten. Tay said, but they cannot win this war alone. We must stand with them. We must fight. An elder from the Vrexian delegation shook his head. Our weapons are useless against the Devourers. What can we possibly contribute? Before Tay could respond, a new voice joined the meeting. Captain Minho appeared on the central display, broadcasting from the Defiant Dawn. With respect, Council, you're thinking about this wrong, Minho said. This isn't about weapons. It's about will. The Devourers won because you were divided, scattered, running. They picked you off one by one. But together we're stronger than the sum of our parts. Easy for you to say, a Kelvorian admiral muttered. Your ships can fight them. Ours can't. Your ships can scout, Lieutenant Yuna said, appearing beside Minho. They can rescue civilians. They can transport supplies. They can repair damaged vessels and provide medical support. War isn't just about who has the biggest guns. It's about logistics, intelligence, and support. Nari stood from her seat in the council chamber. The humans have agreed to share their reactor technology. It will take time to retrofit our ships, but eventually, we can modify our fleets to be invisible to Devourer sensors. We can rebuild. How long will this take? Someone asked. Years, Nari admitted. But we have to start somewhere. Tay looked around the chamber. All in favor of a joint military operation with the humans? Every hand rose. Every hologram signaled agreement. For the first time in 3 years, the galaxy was united. Over the next 2 months, the war changed. The human warships struck again and again at Devourer positions. They hit supply lines, destroyed harvesting operations, and rescued thousands of refugees trapped on occupied worlds. And they never fought alone. Kelvorian ships scouted ahead, providing intelligence. Phyrexian medical ships treated the wounded. Ilthari supply vessels kept the fleet moving. Commander Hyun found himself working closer with Captain Minho than he ever imagined. The two met daily to coordinate operations, and slowly a friendship formed. Your people fascinate me, Hyun said one day as they reviewed star charts. You were alone for so long. That should have made you isolated, suspicious. Instead, you're helping strangers. Minho was quiet for a moment. On Earth, we have a saying, no one gets left behind. It's a military phrase, but it applies to everything. When we found out there were other intelligent species in the galaxy, it never occurred to us to ignore your plight. You needed help. So we came. Even though you knew it might cost you everything, especially then, Minho said softly. That's when help matters most. Dr. Sora had been working with Nari for weeks now, combining human and Kelvorian science. Together they had made a startling discovery. The Devourers aren't just machines, Sora explained to the senior staff. They're a networked consciousness. Every crystal, every ship, every weapon is part of a single mind. The Hive Prime. Can we disrupt the network? Yuna asked. Maybe, Nari said. We've been analyzing the crystalline structure. It resonates at specific frequencies. If we could generate a harmonic counter-frequency, we might be able to interfere with their communication. How? Chief Engineer Jiho asked. Sora pulled up a diagram. We modify the railgun rounds. Add resonator units. When they impact, they'll emit the counter-frequency. It won't destroy the Devourers outright, but it might disrupt their coordination. Might? Minho raised an eyebrow. We won't know until we test it in combat, Nari admitted. Then we test it, Minho decided. How long to modify the ammunition? 3 days, Jiho said. If we work around the clock, do it. The test came sooner than expected. A distress call came from a research station in the Venta system. 2 Devourer cruisers had appeared and were attacking. The station had maybe an hour before its shields failed. The Defiant Dawn and 3 other human warships jumped into the system. Behind them came a support fleet of 20 allied vessels. The Devourer cruisers turned to face the new threat. They had learned from previous encounters. They knew these human ships were dangerous. They knew to focus fire and overwhelm defenses, but the humans had learned too. Fire-modified rounds. Minho ordered. The railguns spoke. The rounds struck the lead Devourer cruiser and detonated. Instead of just kinetic impacts, they released waves of harmonic frequencies. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The crystalline hull began to crack, not from physical damage, but from the inside. The harmonic waves disrupted the crystalline lattice, creating cascading failures throughout the structure. On the Defiant Dawn's bridge, Yuna watched her sensors with growing excitement. Captain, the enemy ship is losing cohesion. Their weapons are powering down. I think we're disrupting the hive-mind connection. The Devourer cruiser drifted, its systems failing one by one. The second cruiser tried to retreat, but the human warships pursued. More modified rounds struck home. More harmonics rippled through crystalline structures. Both Devourer ships were destroyed within minutes. Commander Hyun, watching from his support ship, could hardly believe what he was seeing. They found a weakness. They actually found a way to kill them efficiently. The research station was saved. Its crew of 300 scientists evacuated safely to Allied ships. But the real victory was the knowledge they had gained. Over the next week, every human ship received modified ammunition. The tactical advantage was enormous. Battles that would have taken hours now took minutes. Devourer ships that once seemed invincible now fell to coordinated strikes. The Hive Prime consciousness, spread across thousands of vessels, experienced something new. Confusion, fear, doubt. For 3 years, it had swept through the galaxy unopposed. It had consumed hundreds of worlds and destroyed countless ships. It had believed itself unstoppable. Now it knew otherwise. High Counselor Tay visited the Defiant Dawn personally. He found Captain Minho in the ship's observation lounge looking out at the stars. "Captain, I came to thank you," Tay said. "For what, Counselor?" "For reminding us what we forgot. We're the descendants of explorers and pioneers. Our ancestors built civilizations from nothing. We created art, science, culture. We reached for the stars." Tay's voice grew thick with emotion. "But we forgot how to fight. We became soft, comfortable. When the Devourers came, we didn't know how to resist." "You were never soft," Minho said. "You were peaceful. There's a difference. You built a civilization worth protecting. That's not weakness. But you built something different. You built a civilization that could protect itself." Minho nodded slowly. "We were afraid, Counselor. For 200 years we knew there were others out there. But we didn't know if they were friends or enemies. So we prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. We built weapons and warships. We trained soldiers. We made ourselves strong. And when you finally met us, you found us dying. We found you fighting. That's different. You hadn't given up. You were still resisting, still trying to save your people. That's why we helped. Because you were worth saving." Tay looked out at the stars. "What happens when this is over? When the Devourers are defeated? That's for you to decide," Minho said. "We came here to help, not to conquer. When the fighting stops, we go back to exploring. Maybe we trade. Maybe we become friends. Maybe we just go our separate ways. But whatever happens, you'll still be here. Your civilizations will survive. Because of you. Because you didn't give up," Minho corrected gently. "We just gave you the tools to win. On the bridge, Lieutenant Yuna was running simulations with Commander Hyun. The Kelvorian officer had proven to be a quick study in human tactics. "The key is unpredictability," Yuna explained. "The Devourers learn. They adapt. So we never fight the same way twice. We vary our approach, change our patterns, keep them guessing. It's exhausting," Hyun said. "War is exhausting, but it's better than dying." Hyun smiled grimly. "I'm starting to understand why your people survived isolation. You're too stubborn to quit." That's the nicest thing anyone said about humans all week. They both laughed, a sound that had been rare on military bridges for 3 long years. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 ships and stations, people who had known only despair began to plan for tomorrow. The Hive Prime consciousness was ancient. It had consumed 100 galaxies over millions of years. It knew patience. It knew strategy. It knew how to win. But now, for the first time in its existence, it knew uncertainty. These humans had changed everything. Their weapons hurt, their tactics confused, their persistence frustrated. The Hive Prime had lost dozens of ships, multiple harvesting operations, and countless resources. This could not continue. The Hive Prime made a decision. It would gather its core fleet, over 40 capital ships, each one massing 5 kilometers long. It would bring overwhelming force. It would crush the humans and their allies in one decisive battle. It would return to Talvis Prime, where this had all begun. Commander Hyun received the intelligence report with a sinking feeling. His scouts had detected the massive Devourer fleet assembling 3 systems away. They would arrive at Talvis Prime in less than 24 hours. 40 capital ships, he said to Captain Minho. "We have 7. Even with your weapons, these odds are impossible." Minho smiled. It was a calm, confident smile that Hyun had learned to recognize. It meant the human captain knew something that others didn't. Commander, there's something I haven't told you. The Defiant Dawn and her sister ships? We weren't the entire fleet. We were just the first wave. The scouts. What are you saying? I'm saying that Earth didn't send 7 ships. We sent 50. Within hours, new human warships began arriving in the system. Not just combat vessels, but construction ships, mobile repair docks, supply freighters, and hospital ships. Humanity hadn't come to fight a few battles. They had come prepared for a war. Captain Minho called a meeting of all Allied commanders. The room was crowded with officers from a dozen different species, all looking to the humans for leadership. The Devourers are coming in force, Minho began. They want to end this in one battle. They want to break us here and now. Can we evacuate? Someone asked. We could, Minho said, but they would just follow. They would hunt us down system by system. No, we fight here. We end this. How? High Counselor Tay asked. Lieutenant Yuna activated the holographic display. We've been analyzing the Hive Prime network. Every Devourer ship is connected to the central consciousness. It's their strength, perfect coordination, shared knowledge. But it's also their weakness. Dr. Sora continued the explanation. If we can disrupt the Hive Prime itself, every Devourer ship will be affected simultaneously. They'll lose coordination. They might even shut down entirely. How do we disrupt it? Commander Hyun asked. Nari stepped forward. The Hive Prime exists in a physical form, a massive crystalline structure hidden in the center of their fleet. We need to destroy it. That means penetrating their entire defensive formation, an Allied admiral said. Suicide. Not if we're smart about it, Minho said. We divide our forces. The main fleet engages the Devourer ships directly, keeping them busy. Meanwhile, a strike force punches through the center and targets the Hive Prime. Who leads the strike force? Tay asked, though he already knew the answer. I do, Minho said simply. The battle began when the Devourer fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Talvis system. 40 massive capital ships, each one bristling with weapons, each one connected to the Hive Prime consciousness. They expected to find a scattered, demoralized enemy. Instead, they found over 100 ships waiting in defensive formation. Human warships at the front, backed by layers of Allied support vessels. The Hive Prime hesitated for the first time in its existence. This was not the plan, but it had committed. There was no retreat. The fleets collided in a storm of fire and steel. Human railguns fired continuously, their rounds tearing through Devourer hulls. Modified ammunition released harmonic frequencies that disrupted crystalline structures. Nuclear missiles detonated in brilliant flashes. But the Devourers had learned too. They focused fire on individual human ships trying to overwhelm their defenses. They used their numbers to surround and isolate targets. The human warship Eternal Vigilance took catastrophic damage. Its reactor went critical. The crew had 30 seconds to evacuate. All hands abandon ship, the captain ordered. The crew rushed to escape pods, but many wouldn't make it in time. The captain stayed on the bridge, manually piloting the dying ship toward the nearest Devourer capital ship. The Eternal Vigilance collided with the enemy vessel at full speed. Both ships exploded in a blast that could be seen from Talvis Prime's surface. On the Defiant Dawn, Minho watched the sacrifice with grim determination. Their crew will be remembered. Jiho, how's our strike force? Ready, Captain. 5 ships, all equipped with the latest harmonic weapons. Then it's time. Yuna, plot us a course through the enemy formation. Maximum speed. Aye, Captain. Hold on to something. The strike force, 5 human warships, including the Defiant Dawn, broke from the main formation and accelerated into the heart of the Devourer fleet. Enemy ships tried to intercept, but the human vessels weaved through the battle with incredible precision. They took damage. Armor melted under energy weapons. Hull breaches opened, but they didn't stop. Lieutenant Yuna coordinated the entire strike, her hands flying over her console. Target ahead. Large crystalline structure. Energy signature off the charts. That's the Hive Prime. The Hive Prime structure was beautiful in a terrible way. A perfect crystal formation the size of a small moon, pulsing with inner light. Through it flowed the consciousness that controlled every Devourer ship. It recognized the threat. Devourer ships moved to protect it, forming a defensive sphere. All ships concentrate fire on the approach vector, Minho ordered. We need an opening. The 5 human warships fired everything they had. Railguns, missiles, lasers, a storm of destruction that punched through the defensive line. The Defiant Dawn took a direct hit. The bridge shook violently. Consoles exploded. Jiho's voice came through, strained. Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. We're venting atmosphere. Seal what you can. Keep us moving, Minho ordered. They were close now. So close. The Hive Prime filled the view screen, its surface rippling with energy. Fire the harmonic resonators, Minho said quietly. All remaining ammunition. Everything we have. The Defiant Dawn's railguns fired their last modified rounds. The other Strike Force ships did the same. Hundreds of rounds impacted the Hive Prime structure, each one releasing waves of harmonic frequencies. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Hive Prime began to scream. It was a sound that existed in every sensor, every communication channel, every piece of electronic equipment, a terrible keening wail of a consciousness dying. The crystalline structure cracked. Light poured from the fissures. The cracks spread, running like lightning across the surface, and then the Hive Prime shattered. Across the battlefield, every Devourer ship went dark simultaneously. Their weapons powered down. Their engines died. They drifted lifeless through space. On the Allied ships there was a moment of stunned silence. Then someone cheered. Then another. Then everyone. The war was over. 3 months later, reconstruction efforts were in full swing across the liberated territories. Human construction ships worked alongside alien engineers, rebuilding what had been destroyed. Commander Hyun, now promoted to admiral, oversaw the reconstruction of the Kelvorian defense fleet. But it was different now. The new ships incorporated human design principles, redundancy, armor, kinetic weapons. We're learning from you, he told Captain Minho. Not just technology, but philosophy. How to be strong. How to protect what matters. Minho stood beside him on the observation deck of Talvis Prime Station, watching construction ships move like fireflies in the distance. You were always strong, Minho said. You survived 3 years against an enemy that had crushed 100 galaxies. That takes incredible strength. We survived because of you. No, you survived because you refused to give up. We just gave you the tools to win. High Counselor Tay approached them. The old politician looked younger now. The weight of despair lifted from his shoulders. Captain Minho, the Galactic Council has voted unanimously. We formally invite humanity to join our community. Full membership, equal representation, all the rights and responsibilities that come with it. Minho was quiet for a moment. Counselor, that's a tremendous honor. But I need to ask, what about the other isolated species out there? The ones who don't know about the galactic community yet? What about them? They might be like we were. Alone, scared, preparing for the worst. When you find them, don't judge them for being cautious. Understand why they built walls. And help them anyway, Tay nodded slowly. You're worried we'll become afraid of species with military strength. I'm worried you'll forget that strength and compassion aren't opposites. We're strong because we care. We fight because we refuse to let the innocent suffer. Then help us remember, Tay said. Join the council. Teach us what you know. Be our partners in rebuilding the galaxy. Dr. Sora and Nari had been working together for months now. Their joint research facility on Talvis Prime was producing breakthroughs that combined the best of human and galactic science. I'm going to miss this, Sora said one day. Working with you, I mean. Nari looked up confused. Miss, are you leaving? My tour of duty is ending. I'll be heading back to Earth soon. Then I'm coming with you. What? Nari smiled. The council has established an exchange program. Scientists, engineers, artists, teachers.